Hey, what's up guys? It's Oddcrafters here. 2023 is coming to a close, and it has been an incredible year for new games. So many games have come out this year which I'm sure will end up becoming absolute classics. But, as someone whose only current gen console is a Switch, and whose PC looks like this, I didn't have the opportunity to play a lot of the year's best new releases, so I ended up playing a lot of older games instead. Even so, I wanted to share my thoughts about the games I played this year by talking about the top 10 games I played, whether they were released in 2023 or much earlier than that. So with that, let's get going. Starting us off at number 10, we have Super Mario Sunshine. I'd played this game before this year, but not much of it, and I didn't really remember, so I decided to start again this year, and I'm so glad I did. For a game that came out in 2002, its setting and gameplay are wonderfully fresh. Of course, not everything has aged well in it, with a few cutscenes especially showing how far we've come since then, and some of its levels and challenges feeling unnecessarily frustrating. But those moments are few and far between in an otherwise excellent package, which truly captures Nintendo's creativity during the GameCube era. Next up at number 9 we have a game which I didn't really get into until the very end of the year, but wish I had earlier. F-Zero 99 provides an excellent twist on an absolutely classic 16-bit game by remaking it into a competitive online battle royale, similar to Tetris 99 and the now discontinued Pac-Man 99 before it. The game still plays mostly like the 1990 original, with a couple of changes such as adding the spin attack and a different boost system from later entries in the series. While I couldn't play this game for hours at a time like I could some of the other games on this list, I'll log in just about every day to play a race or two. If you have a Nintendo Switch Online subscription and haven't checked out this game yet, it's a free download and I couldn't recommend it enough. I'm not a WarioWare guy, at least that used to be my excuse to myself for not playing the new games that are releasing. But after getting the opportunity to play the original game on Switch, I don't think I've got an excuse to ignore them anymore. When I first played it, I beat it in only 2 or 3 settings, but I played it for hours more trying to get high scores on many of the stages. WarioWare's addictive gameplay, quirky art style, and entertaining characters are just a few of the many reasons to love it. Pretty much my only complaint with the game is that I wish it was longer. There's only so many times you can go for a high score before it gets stale after all. I know, this isn't really a game, it's DLC for a game that I've been playing since I first got my Switch in 2019. But come on. I would say that doubling the number of tracks in the game from an already huge 48 to a mind-bogglingly enormous 96 qualifies it for this list. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's Booster Course Pass brings new content to a game which is almost a decade old at this point. And while its graphical fidelity doesn't even come close to the base games, at its core, it's still Mario Kart. That is to say, it's an absolute blast. Racing down new tracks again has been such a joy as each wave has been released over the last 2 years, and it really gives me hope for whatever's next for Mario Kart 8's sequel when it inevitably comes out. At number 6 we have probably the most underrated game on this list, and one of the few games I played on PC this year, that being CrossCode. This game is a fantastic 2D action RPG with an incredible world, endearing characters, satisfying combat which is easy to learn but extremely difficult to master, and above all, a story which is engaging throughout. That being said, it isn't a perfect game. The XP system can sometimes make an area go from too easy to too difficult very quickly, and the skill tree takes so much time to level up that by the end it doesn't feel worth it for the small buffs you get. But other than those nitpicks, I cannot recommend this game highly enough, and you all should go and buy it and play it immediately. From one absolute gem of a 2D game to another, The Legend of Zelda the Minish Cap is at number 5. This game is the peak of 2D Zelda, probably being objectively the best one out there. Unlike earlier games in the series, it's almost never overly cryptic or confusing to figure out what you need to do, but it also doesn't spell it out for you. Its world may be fairly small, but it's so packed with little secrets and side quests that never leave you short of things to do. All this is without even mentioning the main gimmick of the game, being able to shrink down to tiny size, and even though this sometimes feels shoehorned in, I can forgive it because of how well it's used in Hyrule Town alone. The dungeons are great, the bosses are great, it's just a great game overall. Earlier in the list, we talked about a 3D Mario game which was great, even if parts of it hadn't aged the best. But at number 4 we have Super Mario Galaxy, which is great and feels like it's barely aged since its release in 2007. Even if the movement is slower than other games in the series, it doesn't feel it, since it fits so well with the other design choices made in the game. The game's short and sweet missions make it so replayable, and allow it to feel continually fresh with new environments and galaxies to explore, and a wide variety of creative power-ups. The use of motion controls in the game is unavoidable, what with it being an early Wii game and all, but it works surprisingly well, especially shaking the Wiimote to spin in mid-air. Other motion controls don't work so well, however, especially riding on the manta rays and rolling balls that appear in a couple of galaxies throughout the game. Even though these are the worst parts of the game, they aren't unplayable by any means. In fact, they're still fairly fun. The fact that the least enjoyable parts of this game are still fun to play shows just how well it was made, and cements it as an absolute classic game in the Mario series. Moving back further in time to the oldest game on this list, we have 2000's Paper Mario. This is a great game, full of quirky characters, a simple yet engaging story, and absolutely fantastic writing. The game also doesn't try to hide its RPG elements like later games in the series do, and while some of those are good in their own right, this game's simple, no gimmicks battle system is far more engaging than Origami King's ring battles or Super Paper Mario's complete lack of turn-based battles. Paper Mario's story is broken up into 8 easily digestible chapters, with each one taking place in a different area, giving a great sense of exploration. The game's partners are some of the best characters in the game, and even though some of the later ones are underdeveloped, they provide a great addition to the combat at least. This is an absolutely fantastic game, and I'd expect to see the remake of its sequel, The Thousand Year Door, on next year's list, because I can't wait to play it. What can I say about Celeste that hasn't already been said? This indie platformer from 2018 quickly became a modern classic upon its release, and I can absolutely see why. Its extremely challenging yet fair platforming makes failure an encouragement to keep playing, rather than give up, and the sheer amount of content in the game is insane. 7 levels in the game's main story, as well as an epilogue level, all of which have B-sides, more difficult versions of the level, and C-sides, even more difficult versions of the level, and a final, extremely long, extremely difficult level added after the game's release. Beating Farewell, the final chapter of the game, is genuinely one of the most difficult gaming accomplishments I've ever achieved. However, I never once found it frustrating. The game's story is a tale of overcoming anxiety and mental health barriers, beautifully complemented by Lena Raine's soundtrack, which single-handedly made her pretty much my favourite video game composer. Pretty much every aspect of this game is perfect. But I played one game this year, which was even better. Come on, did anyone really see anything but this being number 1? The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is the long-awaited sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of my favourite games of all time. Tears of the Kingdom takes the main draw of Breath of the Wild, its world, and more than doubles its size, adding the depths, an underground layer the same size as the original world, as well as floating islands in the sky and caves on the original game's surface. Tears of the Kingdom also introduces an inventive vehicle building system, which led to some of the most chaotic fun I've ever had in a video game. This game also features more varied dungeons and bosses compared to Breath of the Wild's Divine Beasts and Blight Ganons. Whether Tears of the Kingdom is a better game or not than its predecessor is debatable, and I could easily spend a whole video debating that, and maybe I will in the future. But what I don't think is debatable is that this is a fantastic game, which easily takes the number 1 spot on this list, and is almost certainly on the list of my favourite games of all time. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I know there hasn't been a ton of content on the channel this year, especially in the second half. I'm afraid life has just been busy, so I don't have as much time to work on stuff. However, I do still want to make videos, so I'll be working on them whenever I have some free time. I just wouldn't expect regular uploads anymore. But if you've enjoyed this video, do subscribe so you don't miss it when I do upload something else. But until then, thank you for watching, and goodbye.